Hey guys, another episode of Bikes with Drew. So the next couple of episodes here are going to be coming at you guys like fast and furious. All the stuff that I wanted to upgrade on this bike is all shown up. Actually, things that I got refunded for that I'm going to have to contact the company back and see what they want to do about also have arrived. So I really just want to get everything going on this bike. This video specifically, I'm going to be stripping down the cockpit, pulling off the brakes and the grips. These grips they're no good anyways. Pulling the brakes off so that they're out of the way, and I'm actually going to swap the wheel set. So the rims that I'm going to be keeping, as well as the cassette and even the brakes, I'm going to have basically switched over onto this bike here. All right, let's get to it. So because I'm going to be stripping all the stuff off the cockpit, I'm going to pull these calipers out of the way, especially because putting in the new wheel set with the larger rotors, this is just going to get in the way of me putting the wheel back on, essentially. So let's go ahead and pull these off. Grab your Allen key set. As I was saying in previous videos, usually a good set of Allen keys, you can get away with doing just about anything on your bike. So make sure you grab the right size. And these loosen with, so there's two bolts right here to pull the caliper off of the, basically a bracket, like I was showing you in the previous video, but I'm going to pull that bracket off entirely because I'm going to be swapping it out for the newer ones, right? So you crack those. Depending on how long they've been on your bike, sometimes they get a little tight because they'll get heated, and it's almost like they get tapered because they heat up and then cool off, and then heat up and cool off just because they're close to where you're actually braking, right? So the heat from the rotor and stuff. But basically those two screws, once those are off, will drop the bracket and the caliper away from the frame. Now there's also the cable that's routed all the way to the front of the frame. The previous owner of this used a couple of zip ties, so I'm just going to grab some cable cutters and I'll be able to pull off this cable all the way up. Alright, so I got a good pair of snips. Be careful not to cut the cable itself. There's one. And two. So now that those two are cut, coming around the front here, these are actually held on by C-clips. I mean, they both work. Some people think that the C for C-clip stands for crap, but I'm actually going to be using zip ties in mine. I feel like it's something that I don't ever want to move, and if I do want it to move, it's because I'm moving it, so I can cut the zip tie and you know, replace it as I go. But C-clips are really easy. Essentially all you do, you get a flathead screwdriver or something similar that's got a blunted tip on it. You push it in behind and just a little bit of pressure there, and that'll release that C, and you'll be able to take that right off. So to give you an idea, that's what a C-clip looks like. Basically, it just clamps into that space that's built into your frame there. Most bikes will use that type of bracket, so you can use a C-clip. But like I said, I'm going to go ahead and do zip ties for my bike, so for my setup. So pull off the second C-clip there. Now the caliper that was all the way at the back is now only hanging onto the bike from the front. So switching to the front. Real quick again, same thing. I'm going to be changing out this whole bracket anyways, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull it right off as opposed to pulling the caliper off of the bracket. So that's one, and that's two. I don't know if it's got to do with like being jostled around in the front more or anything like that, but I always find that the front caliper and the front spacer is always much less tight, or much easier to crack, I should say, than the one in the rear. So just an observation. So now, same idea. That caliper and brackets come right off. There is, I'll just swing the camera around here for you. There is another zip tie right there. So it's gonna need a quick snip. There we go. And the front brake is now only hanging on by the lever on the handlebars. So now that we'll do the front one first here, the caliper is just hanging on by the lever that's here, These grips, they're going to be chucked. They're, you know, they're way past their prime. They're overdue. They're no good. There are lots of different ways people have for replacing the grips. You can use compressed air. You can use a little bit of water. There's all kinds of tips and tricks. I'm going to try and just muscle them off right now and not go with any of the advice. And just pull that off. That should go in a second here. There you go. These ones, straight in the trash. They're no good. So let's go ahead and get this lever loosened. There you go, and that should just slide right off. Perfect. So that's one of the mechanical brakes off. And there you go. So there's the second brake, this one being the rear one. I'm not going to get rid of these. I'm going to throw them into the parts bin. If ever a friend's bike or something like that needs a replacement mechanical brake or something to get them through a weekend, hey, there you go. You never know when it'll come in handy. So now that we've got all the brakes and cables and all that fun stuff out of the way, we're going to go ahead and swap the wheels on this. We're going to start with the back one. So I'm just going to take this directly off. And that'll fall like that. Perfect. And I'm going to put the new one, oh, just kidding. So I've actually gone ahead and already put on the new 11-speed cassette here. Changing your cassette, it's kind of like a brake bleed like I was talking earlier. It's one of those things where if you don't have the right tool and you've never done it before, it's better off having someone do it or having your local shop do it. Alright, so pardon the dirty workbench here. I'm going to put some of the drivetrain back into the box. Things that I'm not going to need until I do other parts of the bike. Those are the C-clamps I took off. Those are the bolts. It's the throttle cage and snips. Next, what we're going to do is put the big rotors, the big brake upgrade, onto the rims that I'm going to be keeping. So these are actually they're a Torx bit. As I was saying, these are actually a Torx bit. So Torx 25 or T25 is what you're looking for to be able to pull these off. Now there is a torque spec that you might have noticed with lots of bike parts. I don't use a torque wrench, but these are one of the things that goes on fairly tight, and you can hear that when I crack each bolt. There we go. So anytime, I don't know if you guys were ever taught this when you're doing something, anytime you're tightening or loosening something, it's always good to loosen everything and then pull everything off. And then the same thing is to make sure everything is not tightened down as hard as you can, but make sure everything is tight and then go around and crank on everything. And also as much as you can to kind of spread it out. So to give you an idea, you see how I'm taking out this one, then I'm going to take out that one, then I'm going to take out this one, and vice versa, as opposed to loosening all on one side or tightening all on one side as you go, because that can shift and like warp things when you're doing it, not only for bike rotors, but even like changing the tires on your car or something like that. So it's just a good habit to get into. If you have to loosen 5 bolts, do it in a pentagram kind of thing. If you have to loosen 4 bolts, do it kind of like a dime or like an X and then go back. Just a good habit to get into. So we're going to take off 2 more screws. There you go. This is the old rotor. You can see it's pretty, it's almost like it's tempered, like it's very, very worn in. And we're going to put the big brake kit on here. New rotor. Let's just take a look at the size difference here from the old one to the new one. Significantly larger. So, just going to make sure that we're putting this on the right way. Sometimes there are some directional indicators on them, and there is a front and a back. In this case there is. So you just want to make sure you don't mess that up. And that's going to sit right like that. If it comes with new screws, it's a good idea to use the new ones. It's not the end of the world if you reuse your old bolts, but I like to always put new stuff on if it comes with new stuff. So All right, so I can already tell that is so much bigger than what was on there before. The amount of surface area on the rotor, it's actually kind of interesting. The more surface area there is, the more it'll dissipate heat. So it's not going to heat up as much. And much like anything, when something heats, it expands, and that makes so that your braking isn't as good. You'll lose, they call it brake fade, but I don't know, it's kind of a weird term, but your brakes aren't going to work as well because they get hotter. So by having a larger surface there, when you apply the brakes, it won't get as hot as fast. So you'll have better braking power and longer braking power, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and do the front wheel as well. Again, I'll speed up the film for all that. All right, that's awesome. Okay, so front rim's done. It's got the new big rotor on. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to put the frame up and put the proper rims, because they now have the right brakes, put those up and see what it looks like. All right, so there it is, guys. New rims are on there, or I should say the rims from the 4500 with the new big rotors, front and back, and the new cassette installed. It's already starting to look so awesome. I'm so excited to actually get to ride this bike. Yeah. Again, like I said earlier in the beginning of the video, lots of stuff's going to be coming at you really quick here now. With next, we're probably going to go and do the new hydraulic brake install. Then I'm going to swap out the pedals and get my way through the drivetrain and stuff like that, and then switch over some of the stuff from the old cockpit into this one. But we're getting close. I can't wait to ride this thing. So yeah, stay tuned. Like, subscribe, comment below, and we'll see you around.